Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Tier 2 deep dive. As you are coming in, I'm going to put something up on the screen just to help you to get prepared. So we are obviously going to be playing around in the site today and going through Tier 2. So what I'd like you to do if you want to follow along with me today, you kind of have a couple options. You can simply observe and watch. I'll do a lot of modeling today, but if you would like to be able to follow along with me in the site, just please go ahead and get yourself logged in and accessing our tier 2 solution. I do want to make a note too for all of you that this will be recorded. So if you just want to follow along and you want to go back later, you can absolutely do that as well. I am recording. So if you miss something or if you need to jump off early, if you cannot stay for the full time, please don't worry about that. Also, something that I do want to note, when you log in and you access our tier 2 solution, I will be demoing on kind of all the different tabs, all the different pages that you see. You might click on the delivery dashboard and it might say, hey, you don't have access. You actually need to ask your school lead for permission. Please don't worry if you don't have access for our deep dive. Again, I'm going to make sure that this is recorded so you can come back, you can watch it later, so you can just kind of follow along with me. I don't have too much built in where you have to be able to practice in that delivery dashboard. I'm going to show you some things in there, but if you are unable to access it right now, please don't panic for this training. If you need access, you can get it later and you can always go in and explore and play around. So just to get yourself prepared, go ahead and log in. We will access that intervention library and the training and resource hub during our time together today as well. All right. I know we still have some people coming in. So I will repeat myself a little bit in the beginning here, and then we'll go ahead and get started and jump into content. So if you're just joining us, if you could just access our Tier 2 site through our curriculum page. So curriculum.characterstrong.com, just to make sure that you are able to access that. And again, I am recording, so if you cannot access anything, please do not panic. You'll be able to come back and watch the recording later. You can fast forward, you can listen on double speed, which honestly I prefer when watching a recording. So appreciate everybody joining us today. And we'll go ahead and get started. So first, let me just start by introducing myself so you know who's talking at you for 3 hours today and interacting with you. My name is Nicole Taylor. I am the director of Tier 2 at Character Strong. It says the Tier 2, Tier 3 specialist, incorrect. I obviously have not updated my slides. I'm the director of Tier 2 here at Character Strong. So I obviously work very prominently on our Tier 2 product, but I also do work in the Tier 3 product as well and our trainings for Tier 2 and Tier 3, and I do implementation coaching as well. I'm really excited to be with all of you today. Tier 2 is my favorite tier. No offense to all the other tiers of support, but I love Tier 2 and I love Tier 2 work. So excited for all of you to first, if you are just new to Character Strong and our Tier 2 product, CST2, thank you for joining us. I'm excited for you to get going and learn and explore and start supporting students. Knowing that we are kind of towards the end of the year, I'm sure many of you are here to think about what will this look like next year, potentially in the fall. So I am going to urge you to be thinking about maybe what you can do, what you can explore for the remainder of this school year, and then what you might need to do in the fall to prepare yourself to use the solution to support students. I also just want to give you a little bit of my background so you know as well for like question purposes, if you have specific questions that come up. I'm a school psychologist by training, so that is my primary background. So I obviously worked as a traditional school psychologist in the special education space and in the intervention space. But I was also a MTSS consultant for all things social, emotional, behavioral, mental health supports for students. So that is Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. I also supported mental health and suicide prevention, as well as some restorative practices. So I span a lot of tiers, all tiers. So if you have questions and want to make some connections, please feel free. A few things just to help us get started so you know what to expect for our time together. This is a 3-hour deep dive. Again, I am recording. So if you cannot stay for the whole time, if you need to come back and access learning later, that is totally fine. Not a problem whatsoever. I am going to have you utilize the chat, or you can use the raise your hand feature if you have any questions. I will ask you some questions and I want to hear from you in the chat. Also, if anybody wants to unmute and share, I'm a very casual presenter. Please do not feel afraid to unmute and either ask a question or share a response if you would like to. I love to hear your voices. So if you're in a space where you're able to do that, if you can turn your camera on, I love to see people. If you can unmute, I love to hear from people as well. We will have, again, some embedded time to explore. So I'm going to do kind of a section of content, talk about the concepts. I will model and demo for you, and then I'm going to set you free for a little bit to give yourself some time to go in and explore, ask questions as you are in the site, and if you need support with anything. What I am going to do as well, I want to make sure that you can log in. So curriculum.characterstrong.com, and we are going to be accessing this tier 2 solution here on the left hand side. I'm going to mention for those of you who have come in that when you log in, if you are just brand new, if you are just getting started, some of you may log in and when you click on the delivery dashboard here, you may not be able to see it. It might say you actually need permission from your school lead to see this. Please don't panic. Please don't worry about that for our time together today. I will be modeling in our delivery dashboard. I'm going to show you how to use it, how to add students, how to add support, and manage that. But you don't necessarily have to have access for our time together today. We'll be exploring on other pages as well. So if you do not need, you don't need access, but if you don't have it, send a message to your school lead or your admin and say, hey, can you please give me tier 2 permissions? All right. Hopefully there are not any questions right away to get started, but we're going to jump in to our content. Again, please shout out at me, raise your hand, throw something in the chat if you need anything. I want to get us started with a connection opportunity. So here at Character Strong, anytime you join a webinar, a learning opportunity, or a training with us, we always want to make sure that we are starting off on that like relational note. So we always begin with a connection opportunity. And my connection opportunity for you today is related to tier 2 because I would love to know where you're at. So my connection ask for you today is which one of these images, 1, 2, 3, or 4, how does tier 2 feel for you in your system? So whether you are at a district level or you're at the school level, so you can do this for your school, you can do this for your district, depending on your position. What does tier 2 feel like right now in your system? 1, 2, 3, or 4. And I know we have some also just Character Strong people joining us today. So if you have been in a system doing tier 2 or not doing tier 2, you can reflect back on a system that you were in or any systems maybe that you're supporting in your work. So 1, 2, 3, or 4. And if you'd be willing to share why, I would love to know that too. Douglas, number 2, our coffee shop. Would you like to share why you chose number 2? You can either put it in the chat or if you'd like to unmute.
As a counselor, most of my tier 2 stuff is done in my office.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you are maybe sitting at the table, not a coffee table, not a coffee shop. Sometimes I like to make the joke that when we are providing tier 2 support to students, sometimes we are in like a small room or in a closet. We are in an empty classroom. We do supports anywhere. Marcy, I see a 4. Our busy street. Yeah. Would you be willing to share why you chose number 4?
Yeah, I work in a district and I think everybody is doing something, but it's not the same thing. And so it's kind of chaotic and
Okay.
it works to a degree, but it's
Yeah.
pretty chaotic, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. So you may be feeling like we're doing something, right? I would guess to say that any of you who are here, you are doing tier 2 work because we can't get around it, right? We can't get around only doing tier 1. We're always doing tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 at the same time. But that can look like chaos. It can look very different from building to building, depending on the size of your district or what the expectations are for your buildings in terms of implementation. So sometimes it can feel like chaos, and we want to try to streamline what that looks like and ensure that all of our teams at all of our spaces and all of our buildings are doing things in a similar fashion. There's going to be some nuances, obviously, per building, but our goal is to help you understand what tier two implementation looks like and replicate that across all of your buildings. So, Marcy, I appreciate your insight there because we see that chaos quite often. So, my last little question for you before we get started is how are you feeling about implementing CST2? So, Character Strong Tier 2, CST2 is our solution title that you'll see me say CST2 throughout our time today. How are you feeling about implementing CST2? So, if you are brand new, how are you feeling? If you maybe have gotten started a little bit or you're digging in, what sort of emotions do you have related to implementation right now in your system? How are you feeling about implementation? And I'm going to pull up my chat too. I know with many of the districts that I am supporting, there is kind of a mix of feeling excited, but also overwhelmed, feeling like there is a lot, a lot in the system, a lot to tier two implementation, but excited to have a product that supports and provides those actual tier two interventions because sometimes we don't have what we need. Marcy, very excited. Yeah, absolutely. Not only for our students, but also for families, also for our educators. So when we are implementing tier two, yes, we're going to be supporting individual students or groups of students, but that inadvertently does impact our classrooms. It impacts our educators and their experiences with students. It also really does influence our families and their experience with their students. So there's many things that you're going to see in our solution that obviously are for students, that are for educators, and that are also for families. And yeah, there's lots to figure out. So I'm hoping that with our time together today, you will start to feel a little bit more confident in going in and using and starting the process, not doing every single thing that we talk about today, but getting a good starting point. Okay, let's review some objectives for today. So my ultimate goal is to help you learn the steps of what we call the CST2 process. This is how you implement tier two. So we will go through all the steps of the process so you know what it looks like to do each one of those steps. Then I want to make sure that you have an understanding of the actual supports or interventions that are available to you. So we have a small group curriculum, we have performance-based interventions, and we also have attendance support. So I want to make sure that you know what those look like and how to access them. And then I'm hoping that through me modeling and demoing, you'll really understand how to use the CST2 platform to be able to actually implement tier two as a system of support, and then of course deliver those interventions to students. So the way that this will be structured is we will go over some of the what. So making sure that you understand core concepts, you actually are gaining knowledge around how to implement tier two, as well as the types of supports that we offer within tier two and how you can start to build your menu of supports for students. And then I'm going to model for you in the site. And then I want to give you time to go in and explore and be able to play around in there as well. So I'll model, you'll explore, we'll do content, I'll model, you'll explore, and we'll kind of follow that pattern through our entire time during the deep dive today. So we're going to start first with, again, kind of those core concepts. We want to make sure that we all have a very, very clear understanding about what tier two is. We tend to think that everybody knows in our system what tier two is, and there can tend to be a lack of clarity, and that not everybody in our system is actually knowledgeable or clear about what we mean by what is tier two. How would we actually define tier two? So Tier two, first and foremost, it is early intervention. This means that we are providing support to students before it becomes a larger need. We really want to make sure that we are getting students the support right away. Tier two is also a team-based implementation. It is a problem-solving process that involves looking at multiple sources of data to make decisions for students. And I'm going to highlight that it is team-based. We're going to talk about a lot today, and one person should not be responsible for this. Maybe not even two people should be responsible for this. This is really going to be a team sport, as you'll notice everything that we go through today. Tier two is also about making sure that we are getting students the support as soon as we start to see a student have a concern or have a need emerge. So this really goes back to our data and do we have access to high quality and the data that we need to say, ooh, a student is starting to have a problem. Let's intervene right now. Let's make sure that we can actually provide the support the student needs as close to the time as we see that need as possible. And the last piece is that tier two is not for all of our students, but about 10 to 15% of students within our system. And we know that we're providing this tier two in addition to that universal core instruction that they're getting at tier one. I do like to mention that 10 to 15% of students, that includes your academic and your behavior supports at tier two. So today we are focusing on that behavior side or that social emotional side, those types of tier two interventions. We're not talking about academics today, but that 10 to 15% should include both when you're thinking about how many students that you are supporting in your system. So even though we're talking just behavior today, it should not be 10 to 15% of behavior and then another 10 to 15% of students that are being supported academically in tier two. So that is both. So I want to make sure that that is very clear so that you don't have 20 to 30% being supported in your system. So really quickly, I want to review our Character Strong formula for tier two. We love a formula at Character Strong. We have a formula for many, many, many things. So first, again, we're talking about some students. We are not supporting all. We are not supporting a huge percentage. We are not supporting half of our building. In tier two, we are supporting some students. We are providing targeted support. We're going to talk about this in depth today, what it means to provide a targeted support to students so that we are actually meeting the need that we see. And then how we go about doing this is that team-driven problem-solving process, which we're going to walk through all of those steps today. So something else that I do want to clarify is when we are talking about a tier two support or an intervention, what do we mean by that? What actually constitutes as a tier two support? How can we define what a tier two support is so that we're all very clear on that? So first, tier two can be both individual or group. So an individual-based support or a small group or group-based support. It can be either or, depending on the type of support that you are providing the student. Typically, tier two interventions do not require highly specialized training or credentialed individuals in order to provide those supports to students. So as you're going to see in our system, we have created supports and outlined the implementation, the guidance, the facilitation of, so that you can start to have conversations about who can do this, who can provide these supports for students, how can we build capacity within our system so that more people are actually able to provide tier two supports to students. So typically what we see is that tier two supports, they do not require specialty training or a lot of credentialing. We want to make sure that we have multiple people that are able to provide these supports and that we kind of save those specialty positions or credentialed sort of individuals for tier three, because that's where we start to see the need for more specialized support or training. And the last piece is, you're going to hear me say this over and over and over again. It'll just be burned into your brain by the end of our deep dive that we want to make sure that we're selecting a support that is going to really target that need exactly. We call this targeting the root cause of the student's need. So we're going to dig into what is the root cause of the student's need and how can we pick a support that's going to support that root cause so that we aren't wasting the student's time, our time, delivering a support to a student that isn't going to change their behavior or get them the skills that they need. So kind of overview first of what is tier two? What are tier two supports? How can we explain this system of support to everyone in our system so we are all on the same page? So let's talk about that process. So this is where we're going to spend most of our time today. We're going to walk through each step of the process. I'll bring you into the site and show you how you can get this step done, the resources that you're going to need. So it is a 5-step problem-solving process. But what you see highlighted first is that this actually begins with what we call readiness. And readiness is really vitally important. Before we even start to engage in step one, we want to make sure that our system is ready to do this work and to do tier two implementation. What we know is that unfortunately, we can see up to about 80% of our efforts can fail if we are not ready to do it, if our staff is not ready, if our system is not ready. So what we have built in are some supports to help you get that whole school readiness situated and good to go, and also make sure that you have identified and you have a team who's going to be able to engage in this entire process. So we're going to jump into the site and I'm going to show you the first place that we're going to go that you will be able to access these resources. So if you are logged in to our site and you are under tier two, the first place I'm going to point you to is left-hand panel, that training and resource hub. So the training and resource hub, I actually will always tell teams, this is where I want you to start. Do not click anywhere else. Start here. Always, always, always start with training and resource hub. What you're going to see under that tier two process tab first is what we're going to talk about, whole school readiness and teaming. I'm going to start us under whole school readiness and then we'll transition to teaming. So if you want to see the resources, you want to explore this with me, we will be in that training and resource hub and whole school readiness. This is where we're going to start. Just so you know, kind of a layout of these pages, there will likely be some form of an overview video or kind of a knowledge-based video so that you understand the purpose of this page, the resources, and also the step potentially of the process. So you'll see a video and then you'll see links to various resources. Some of them are going to be like a slide deck. Some will be a downloadable Google and or Microsoft resource. You will also see PDFs. You will see rubrics. So there's going to be a lot linked on these pages. I'm going to point you to the ones that are going to be the most important to kind of get you started, but know that there's more in here that I might not touch on today. So let's think about whole school readiness. Let's think about implementation and how we can actually begin. So what we know is that implementation of anything, obviously today we're focused on tier two, but this is true for anything you're implementing in your system, is that it is a process. And that process does have to begin with some what we consider pre-implementation work. And that's where readiness falls. This is making sure that we are preparing our system, we're preparing our people, and we are actually investing time in this because we don't want our efforts to fail. We don't want to get to the point later where we say like, well, tier two is not working, or these supports aren't working, or our team has fallen apart, or we don't have the right people doing this work. We want to set ourselves up for success in the beginning so that when we get to what we consider active implementation, we can really do a good job with active implementation. So first, preparing our whole school. Nicole, why do we need to prepare our entire school for this? So we like to think about whole school readiness with a boat metaphor. And that a lack of whole school readiness looks like everybody in their own boat. They have their own paddles and they're just like paddling around. We're in every direction. Everybody's doing their own thing. Kind of like Marcy mentioned in the beginning, it like kind of feels like chaos, right? Maybe within one building it feels like chaos, or across the district it feels like chaos. And we want everybody in the same boat with the same paddles going in the same direction instead of doing miscellaneous things or whatever they want. So when we think about it this way, the same boat is we all understand and we have shared clarity about what tier two is. We know what it is. We understand what it is. We know what tier two supports look like. We know the data that we're going to be collecting for tier two. We have very, very deep and shared understanding of tier two. That's that shared clarity. So we're all in the same boat. We all have the same understanding. Then the paddles we consider our practices. So we want to engage in shared practices. We want to be doing the same things. We want to be doing the right things. We want to be using evidence-based practices to implement tier two. So we all have to know and have shared clarity. And then we all have to be doing the same things and the right things. And then that last piece is let's go in the same direction, meaning that we're doing our practices with consistency. And the more consistent we are with implementing tier two practices and doing it well, the greater our sustainability will be in the future. So starting off with good knowledge and shared clarity, making sure we understand what it looks like to do tier two, what those practices look like, then actually doing those things eventually leads to sustainability. And that's really, really what we want for your tier two system. I am thrilled to see everybody on here getting this training today. But what I like to say is, I don't want to necessarily see you in 2 years, 3 years starting over. Like my wish is that your system gets to that sustainability piece, which really does start with this pre-implementation and getting our systems ready. So we are starting here so that you get yourself off on a really, really good foot and you can do this well. So how we can support you to engage in this whole school readiness is that whole school readiness page and some of those resources. So the first thing that I want to point you to is you do have access to a slide deck. So when you are on that whole school readiness page, again, I'm here in training and resources and I'm under whole school readiness. The first thing you'll see is this large slide deck here, Tier 2 a comprehensive solution. This is for you to use to deliver learning to your staff. So if you need your staff to gain understanding, to gain clarity, what is Tier 2? What is the process of Tier 2? What are the different types of supports? This is where you can go to access that slide deck to deliver to your staff. What you're also going to see is just an overview of what tier two readiness is, as well as a clarity checklist. I'm going to click on this clarity checklist so you can see what we would expect everybody to have clarity on in your system. You can use this as an assessment, actually collect a little bit of data to know, do the leaders and our educators and our system understand what tier two supports are? Do they understand why tier two supports are actually needed in our system? Do they know what outcomes we are trying to achieve within implementing tier two? What role do people play in the system in tier two for us? What are the educators' role? What are administrators' roles? What are the counselors' roles? What role does everyone play in our system? And do we actually have a plan? What does our implementation plan look like? How are we going to do this? Who's going to do this? When are we going to do this? So you can collect information on the level of clarity that your individuals in your system have on tier two. And this is really good data for you to know. I think we might need to be clearer on what tier two actually is. Like, can we say that everybody in our system really does have an understanding of that? So I'm going to leave this up for like just a moment to give you a second just to kind of ponder for your system right now. One of these 5 areas, the what, the why, the outcomes, the role, or the plan, do you think people may need more clarity? So if you would like, I'll invite you to put that into the chat. One of those 5, what, why, outcomes, role, and plan. Do you think that people tend to need the most clarity in your system, or you think we're going to have to spend some time creating clarity in one of those five areas? So I'm going to let you think about that for a second. If you'd like to put that in the chat or if you'd like to unmute and let us know one of the five that you're seeing in your system. Where do you think individuals may need most clarity right now in your system? The what, the why, the outcomes, the roles, or our plan, our implementation plan, how we actually get this done. Or where are you seeing lack of clarity in your system is another way that you might think of it. What, why, outcomes, role, and plan. Douglas says the what. So, okay. Bailey, what, why, and roles. Yeah, absolutely. Christopher says outcomes. So you might see a couple different places where you will want to work on gaining clarity in your system. So kind of again, that first place that you can start is going to be educating your staff. Again, you can use this slide deck. You can also obviously add in anything that's going to be relevant for your system individually. But that's going to give people at least the what, potentially the why. Your job is going to be to identify the roles, right? You're going to have to know who does what, who is in what position, kind of within your tier two system. Generally, I see a lot of people spending time on the roles. People want to know, like, what's my job here? What's the expectation for me? So, you'll kind of work through all five as you are gaining that clarity. So, with that whole school readiness, that's where you're going to be starting. You are going to be helping individuals understand those five pieces of clarity. That's going to be part of your whole school readiness and making sure that the system is prepared to do the work. So whole school is kind of that first part of readiness. The second part of readiness is making sure that we have a team who is dedicated and willing and going to be really taking on this work of tier two implementation. So in the chat, you can do one, two, or three. Where are you with teaming right now? Do you not have a tier two team yet established? Do you kind of have a team somewhat? Maybe it's one person. Maybe you are the team. You are the tier two team. Or maybe there's one or two of you. Or do you have a full, like you feel like, yeah, we have a full kind of functioning, or at least we've identified who's going to be on our tier two team. So one, two, or three, where are you currently with tier two teaming? Okay, I see some two. So somewhat of a team. Bailey or Douglas, if you are in a position, either in the chat or if you are willing and can unmute, why did you choose two? What would you kind of define as like somewhat for you and your system?
Yeah, sure. So this is Bailey. Doug and I actually work together at the same school. We're both co-school adjustment counselors. So we're kind of in the forming phase of our tier two team. We have what we consider like a clinical team, which is made up of us as the adjustment counselors, our guidance counselor, our administrator, our special ed director. So we're kind of in the, storming and forming phase. So we're wanting to learn more and really hit the ground running with this for next year.
Yeah. Okay. So both of you are kind of considered tier two people, I am assuming, and implementing those supports.
Yes.
But you'd probably like more of you to be doing tier two work. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anybody else, either in the chat or willing to unmute, either, nope, we don't feel like we have a team yet. We're kind of there. We kind of have some people that are doing the work currently, or they're sort of our tier two team, or we do have a full team. I'm sure that many of you might be in that like somewhat. I tend to see a lot of people in that like two, like we kind of have a team, we kind of know who's going to do the work, but maybe we're not totally sure just yet. So as we keep going, as you're reflecting, if you want to share, please go ahead. I want to talk through who might we consider to be on a tier two team. So this is a resource. I'll show you again where the teaming resources live as well. But we want to think about and be kind of I like to say like strategic about who is on our tier 2 team and why they would be on our tier 2 team. So the first thing we want to consider is various areas of expertise. So we want to make sure that on our team somewhere, someone has behavioral knowledge, that has social, emotional, or behavioral health background, someone who is pretty good at data. They understand data, they can analyze and interpret data. We like to have both general education and special education, if possible, represented on the team. That does not mean you need every single grade level. It doesn't mean you need somebody from like your elementary and your if you are like let's say you're like a K through 12 building, or maybe you're a K through 6 building. You don't necessarily have to have every single grade level represented. You could just have like one general ed rep, or maybe you do like somebody who represents lower elementary. So somebody who represents K through 2, somebody who represents 3 through 5 or 3 through 6. If you're a middle school, maybe you do prefer to have like a 6th, 7th, 8th, or just a 7th and 8th representative. So you don't necessarily have to have every grade level, but we want gen ed representation. And we like to have special ed representation as well. The reason we recommend special ed representation is because we tend to see that students who are receiving special ed services may also need tier 2 support. So it is nice to have that person who can kind of bridge. We also know that sometimes when we have students receiving tier 2 supports, that those supports are not enough, and we may end up moving the student up into a tier 3, or potentially we may just move to an evaluation for special education. So it does really help to have that level of expertise on the team as well. We always want to make sure that we have an administrator on our team, right? They are the person who can make ultimate decisions a lot of the time about who's going to do things. Maybe we need to kind of work on our schedule in our building. So making sure that we have administrative representation as well. So certain areas of expertise that we like to see on a team. And then we also want to make sure that they have an identified role. So what you see here is who has kind of these areas of expertise. What is their name? And I will also tell you, it doesn't have to be like a one-to-one. So myself as a school psychologist, when I was on tier 2 teams, I was kind of multiple areas of expertise. So I was that like behavioral or social emotional health person. I was also more often than not the person who kind of brought the data expertise. Sometimes I even also brought the special ed expertise. So I was like a 4-to-1 where my name was next to all of those areas of expertise, and that's what I represented on the team. But then in terms of my role, maybe I was the facilitator on certain tier 2 teams, or I was the tiered coordinator, or I was like the data person who brought the data to the team. So you can have one person be multiple areas of expertise, but then we want to make sure that everybody on the team actually has a role and a purpose to why they're on that team. And when they show up to the meeting, they have a job. So maybe they are going to be the facilitator. Maybe they're going to contribute. Maybe they are going to be responsible for follow-up communication. Maybe they are bringing the data, whatever it might be. I want to know that when I come to the tier 2 meeting, I have a purpose for being there, and I want to know what my role and what my responsibility is. So we're thinking about, do we have areas of expertise represented? And do those people have a job on the team, and what is their job? So when we start to think about our current tier 2 team, our current tier 2 functioning, and what we want our tier 2 functioning to look like, we can actually assess this. I'm going to say you're lucky that you're with a school psych today, because I'm a data tyrant. I like to collect data on everything, and you can actually collect data on how well your team is functioning for tier 2. So I will show you where this inventory lives, but you can assess how your functioning is going currently for your team, and then you can identify areas where you might need to improve. So if we can collect information, we can start to action plan around what do we need to do to become a more effective tier 2 team? Because as you're going to see today, we're going to talk about implementation of a lot of different things, an entire process, interventions, looking at data, making decisions, moving students around the different tiers. And so we want to have a team that is very effective and that is able to do this work very well. So I have some to-dos for you to think about. Maybe you start thinking about this for next year. Again, if you're just getting started, maybe you start to have these conversations now, but then you really decide in the fall, like, here's our team, and this is what they're going to be responsible for doing. So first is thinking about, do you have the right people on your team right now? And do we know their role and their responsibility? You will know after today what roles and responsibilities you might want to give to people. You don't have to know that right away, right this second. We also ask that you create norms and a vision and a purpose. Why we ask you to do this is because we tend to have a lot of teams. We have a tier 1 team. Sometimes we have a leadership team. Sometimes we have a PBIS team. We have an MTSS team. We have a student support team. We have SIT teams, BAT teams, all the acronym teams. And we need to know the exact purpose of all of those teams. So does your tier 2 team have the same purpose as one of your other teams? And do we need both of those teams? So a little bit of a team audit when you start to create kind of this vision and this purpose will help you to hone in on teaming across your system. So what is the purpose of your tier 2 team? Calendar out your meetings. So ideally, you are meeting like at least 2 times per month for tier 2 to help put students into supports, to look at data, to do action planning for tier 2 implementation. I like to say, if you are just getting started, if you have the ability to do this, I have seen more success with teams implementing tier 2 if in the beginning, like that first year of implementation, they can actually meet 1 time per week. And I know that that is a huge ask. That is a lot of time on your calendar. That's a lot to get all those people together every week. But if you can do it, and you can do it for that first year, I can almost guarantee you, you will have very, very good success with tier 2. So if you can do it, that is my highest recommendation, is meet 1 time per week, if possible, right when you get started. As we talk through that problem-solving process today, you're going to see how it is built into our platform for you. But if you have a agenda or a meeting agenda that just follows like kind of where you are at within the process, that's really going to help you to stick to it. Make sure you follow the process. Make sure we are looking at data in the right way, making decisions in the right way. So I'm going to urge you to use a meeting agenda that follows that process. And then use that rubric to assess your functioning as a team. Collect some data right now. Get a baseline. See where you're at. How are you functioning currently? And then where can we improve? So I want to show you where all these things live. I'm going to give you a little bit of explore time. And this is also at the same time an opportunity for you to ask questions about what we just covered. So where I'm going to kind of set you loose is to that training and resource hub. And I'll pull the slide back up so you can see all of this. So training and resource hub, 2 places, whole school readiness. You can explore those resources. You can look at the slide deck. You can pull that clarity checklist back up. Then you can also go to this teaming. So we haven't clicked in here yet, but again, similar structure to the whole school readiness page. There's going to be an overview of establishing your tier 2 team. That roles and responsibilities document that I showed you is linked here. You can also access, if you need support establishing your vision, your purpose for a team. If you really need to set some meeting norms, we have an example agenda. You're also going to see that effective teaming inventory. So you can take a look at this. You can start to look at where are we in terms of our current teaming functioning. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to explore those 2 pages. So let me pull those directions back up. So going to that training and resource hub, you can click around on whole school readiness and in that teaming, and then please put any questions in the chat. You can unmute and ask questions during this time as well, and I'm happy to answer it. We'll take about 5 minutes to do this, do some explore, and then we will come back together. Any questions about that before our first explore time? Maybe not yet. Okay. All right. Let's take a couple minutes to explore again. Feel free to unmute, ask any questions in the chat. I will start our timer for about 5 minutes and we'll do some explore. If you need help finding anything as well, please let me know. I'm going to try my hardest. I'm going to try to get some music going. My Zoom was not super happy with my sound earlier, but we're going to try. You can let me know. It might be like really faint. I might be able to get some just like light music in the background. We'll see. If not, I apologize that we might not be able to get it. Let me know. I'm going to play some music here. Let me know if you are able to hear this at all. Give me like a thumbs up in the chat, a yes in the chat. You can send me a thumbs up. It might be really quiet. Nope. Oh man, okay. It is not liking my sound today. Okay, I apologize. We're gonna have quiet explore time. I guess we'll be like in a library for explore time, and that's okay. Let me know if you have any questions as you're exploring here, and I'll give you a couple minutes. We'll take just about another minute on this whole school readiness and teaming pages. If you have any questions, let me know. Obviously, you can still ask questions about this portion. Don't feel like if you think of something later, you cannot ask, but we'll take about another minute on these 2 pages. All right, so we've spent a little bit of time thinking through how can we prepare our system and what might we need to do to get a team together who might need to be on our team? What does our team functioning look like? And these 2 pieces are going to be really, really helpful to think about, plan for, get ready for before we then jump into this tier 2 process. So again, the tier 2 process that we're going to go over, we're going to start with step 1. This is your team. Your team is responsible for implementing this process. This is what it means to do tier 2. So how do we implement tier 2 through this process? So we really want to make sure that we have people ready to do this. Our school, our staff, our people know this is what to expect. This is how we're going to operate in terms of our tier 2 systems implementation. So I'm really going to urge you to not skip over preparing your system and engaging in that readiness. Again, if you have more questions as we're going today about readiness, about teaming, please let me know, put it in the chat, unmute. But we're going to jump into step 1. Step 1 is detect and triage. And what this really looks like is this little flow chart here. So this is what your team is going to get really good at doing. Step 1 tends to take quite a bit of time. We are going to be looking at data to identify students who might need tier 2 support. And then we have to decide who actually gets tier 2. Will we put students into tier 2? Will we keep them and maybe support them a little bit more robustly in tier 1? Some students we might have to move all the way up to tier 3. So we engage in this triage of who gets what type or level of support. So let's define what these are and then talk about kind of both of those things. So proactive detection. So in the detect and triage, so the detect part is we are gathering information, we are gathering data to make sure that we can identify students right when we start to see that need. So as close to the time as we possibly can to see that students' need emerge, we can get them support as quickly as we can. So this is going to be that information or data gathering process that helps us identify students who might need tier 2 support. So what this looks like is deciding on or using different data collection methods. So what types of data can you access to give you this information? First, we can utilize proactive student data. That can be our grades, that can be academic screening data, that can be attendance data, that can be behavior referral data. So that proactive data, sometimes we call this our early warning system data. Any screening, so a behavioral screener, social emotional screener, screening data that would help us to flag students who may be at risk or high risk or not at risk. And then another option is to do a nomination. Sometimes we call this like referral, educator referral. I'm going to talk about a structured nomination that really helps you to identify a little bit kind of greater root cause of what's going on with the student. So those are some of our options for data collection. So proactive or early warning system data, you can use a screener. We can also engage in that nomination or that referral process with our educators. What I would love to know is just right now, How do you identify students currently as needing tier two support? So, what are you doing right now? What does your process look like right now? What data do you access right now to identify students for tier two support? So, if you would like to share that in the chat, or if you prefer to unmute, what does this look like right now? How do you currently identify students as needing tier two? What do you do? What is the process? What data do you access? So I'll give you a second if you're typing in the chat or if you'd like to unmute, please feel free. What is your current process? How do you currently identify students for tier two? You can also say, we don't know yet, or we don't have a process yet, or we don't identify students for tier two quite yet, or I don't know what our process is. Those are also acceptable answers. You might not be totally clear. You might not know. You might really know. We use this type of data. We use educator referral. We use X amount of behavior referrals. We use a screener. How do you currently identify students for tier two right now? What does this look like for you? Can share in the chat or you can unmute. Okay, weekly program at meetings, yes. And Doug and Bailey, right? Bailey, you're in the same position. Your position is a little unique in terms of the students that you are supporting as well. So I love that you're meeting weekly. First of all, great. Keep that up. Don't stop the weekly meetings. Christopher, weekly clinical meetings with teachers. Okay, so maybe engaging in possibly looking at data at those meetings, also possibly just taking into account what educators are noticing with students. What are they seeing? What concerns do they have? So kind of potentially that like referral process where we're asking educators to refer students. Yeah, absolutely. So we're getting into a space, at least with others, to kind of decide which students need tier two. Oh, great. Okay. Oh my gosh, your whole team is here. Excellent. Okay. So we have a group of you who is working together. So when we think about what types of data we can look at. So I mentioned that you can use screening data. So we have a screener that comes with the Character Strong solution. The first is the Strengths and Needs screener. This is an educator report screener where educators are reporting on the externalizing behaviors, the internalizing behaviors or concerns of students, as well as student strengths or what we are not seeing in terms of strengths. So like student skill deficit or areas of struggle. So this is going to be educator report where we are asking educators to look at very specific behaviors and identify how much support does a student need in order to do these things. So this is one thing that you can use that does come with our Character Strong solution. The other one that comes with is the Youth Strengths and Needs screener, where students are the reporter and they are identifying internalizing needs as well as potential areas of strength. This is for grades 3 through 12. We don't recommend it for K through 2. And I will say even third grade can be a little young still sometimes, but you can use it with third grade, maybe with some educator support. But this is student report. So you can have the educator report side or you can have the student report side as a validated screening tool that you can use. The other thing that I mentioned was using some type of nomination or referral. What we use is called a structured nomination form. And what we are asking here is we are asking educators to look at very concrete definitions of certain behaviors, externalizing behaviors and internalizing behaviors. And we're asking those educators to identify, are there any students that like meet this specific criteria or meet this definition or have these examples of concerns? Sometimes what we can see is that an educator will refer a student and say like, I'm just having issue with this student, or this student like can't do something, or this student is really just like a behavior problem, or like every day I'm trying to get the student to do what I need them to do and they're not doing it. And obviously that educator is experiencing difficulty and they're identifying that something's going on with the student. But what this helps us to do is say like, well, what exactly is going on with the student? What exact behaviors are you seeing? How is it presenting? What does that mean in terms of impact to the student? So we are structuring that like referral process a little bit. So we get a little bit less subjective information and we're getting a little bit more objective information to make decisions. Then, of course, you will always have access to your attendance, your grades, your behavior referral data if you have a process for educators entering behavior referral. And you can always use that. Sometimes we even have like a family referral process if families have a concern as well. For secondary students, sometimes we have like a student referral process where they can even say like, I am struggling in a certain area. So when we have all these different sources of data, we have to decide, when do we actually like look at this? When do we use this data to make decisions? So this is just an example kind of year-long data timeline. Typically, when we use a screener, we only do that 2 to 3 times per year. And what we like to say is that students, their needs, they don't wait to have a need until we screen them. Like the student doesn't say like, oh, tomorrow is screening day, or tomorrow is like, we're doing sabers tomorrow. Like I'm all of a sudden going to have a need. And so those like 2 to 3 times a year, that's very spread out. That means we are waiting to identify students who in the in-between time might have needs come up or emerge. And so we need something in between. So you always have access to your proactive data or your early warning system data. You can look at that on a daily basis. I do not expect you to do that, but you have access to it daily. So we can look at that at least monthly. We can do our screener 2 to 3 times per year. And then we can also ask for like teacher referral either whenever you would like, or we might structure that up a little bit and say, we want every quarter for you to provide the tier 2 team with potential students for a tier 2 support. So you can kind of outline throughout the year, what data are we looking at and when across the year to help identify students. So we have to decide what type of data do we want to use, and then when are we going to look at that data to identify students. Once we have gathered that data, once we know, okay, these are the students that have come up as potentially having a need or we are concerned, then we engage in that triage process, which is now identifying who's going to get tier 2, who is not going to get tier 2. So how we do this is by making sure that we have decision rules identified. So we need to know, when do we make the move to tier 2? When do we make the move to tier 3? Or when do we do the reverse when a student is progressing, right? Ideally, they're doing well in a tier 2 or maybe a tier 3 support, and we move them back into just receiving tier 1 support. So do we have decision rules or decision criteria laid out to help us make those decisions about when we move a student to a different tier of support? So we establish what kind of data we're going to use, when we're going to look at it, and then what's our criteria? When does a student get tier 2? When do they not get tier 2? When do they maybe get tier 3? Or when do we move them back down? Part of this process is going to be identifying like who in our system can look at this data. When do they look at it? So that is also why when you have that tier 2 team identified, you can say, part of our decision making for tier two is looking at this data. We are the ones that are going to be doing this triage process. So it's quite a bit of work to only have like a singular person on your tier two team or two people on your tier two team to really go through this data process. Where I want to point you to is, again, this detect and triage. So we're still under Training and Resources Hub, but now we are here in detect and triage. This is that step that we're talking about right now. And here's where you're going to be able to access resources, overview videos, so a little bit of additional learning beyond what I'm going through with you today. And again, resources that are going to help you. This is where you will find our strengths and needs screener, our youth needs screener, as well as a training deck to train your staff on how to use the screener. And then what you're going to see here as well, I like to point this out, is a guide for this detect and triage step. This guide is going to really be your tool to use to walk through everything that I just mentioned. So if you are saying like, oh my gosh, Nicole, this is a lot. Yes, I told you this step one. This takes time. This takes planning. This guide for step one, detect and triage, is going to walk you through all of these things. So on page 3, there's going to be a list of questions that, oh my gosh, I'm giving myself a thumbs up. Okay. Yes, great. So do you use proactive data? Do you have a timeline to look at that data? Do you have decision rules? Do you know how much capacity you have within your system to meet the needs of students? So what this guide is going to do is it's going to walk you through different resources to help you to do this step and set yourself up for success with step one. So what data will you use? When will you look at this data? It will help you to kind of estimate who can provide support so that you know how many students can we serve in tier two and in our system. It will help you to create, sorry, let me scroll back up, those decision rules as well. So this guide for step one, detect and triage, is going to be what you can access to help you to be able to do this step. Now, a couple of things that I want to mention, and then I'm going to give you some time to look at this as well, is first, in proactive detection and triage, there is something called a base rate. The base rate is after you collect all this data or you decide, your base rate is how many students do we have as being identified as potentially needing tier two or they're at risk. This is influenced by the quality of your tier one implementation. We know this. More students will look like they need tier two if we have kind of rough implementation of tier one. And that does not mean that you should be serving every single one of those students that gets flagged in tier two. You need to go back and work on your tier one. So your data that comes up is going to really tell you what the quality of your tier one looks like. And we may need to be doing some tier one and tier two work at the same time. I mentioned this, just because students get flagged as being at risk or identified doesn't mean they automatically get tier two. You have to create those like decision rules or that criteria to say like, when do students get tier two? It doesn't mean that they got identified as at risk. We have to set some criteria to say, this is when a student is actually going to get tier two support. Also, data is data and you interpret it, right? You make that decision for students about, do they actually need a tier two support or not? So that guide is really going to lead you through understanding what and who in our system is going to get tier two and when do they actually meet that criteria. So I want to give you some time to look. I've kind of structured this for you, but please feel free to look at anything. Is you can look at those strengths and needs or youth needs screeners or that training deck. You can look at that structured nomination form. You can also look at this guide for step one as well. Kind of see on page 3 and those questions, sort of where are you at in this process of identifying students, using data and identifying students for tier 2. After we go through this first step in this explore, we will take a break. So if you need to kind of roll this together with a break, we can do that as well. But I'm going to give us kind of 5 minutes for explore, also so I can be here to answer any questions, but we will take a break after this too, so you can expect that. So let's take, again, about 5 minutes, give you some time to click in that detect and triage page. Please let me know if there are questions that come up in the chat or unmute, and then I'll let you know when we will break for a break. All right, let me set our timer here. I'm going to check in with the chat too, just because I have not checked in since we started this section. So I'll check in on the chat and see if anything came through. Take about 5 minutes for that detect and triage page. We'll take a couple more minutes to give you some time to look at that detect and triage page. And then I'll get us rolled in to a break. Please feel free to also use that break time if you have any questions or if you want to pick my brain for anything during that time as well, you can. So let's take a couple more minutes on detect and triage, and then I will give us some time for a break. And I'm sorry for the silent explore. I would much rather have some nice music for you to listen to. So quiet explore times because my Zoom was not cooperating. Maybe I can troubleshoot that on our break too. I'll see. I'll see if I can get it going. Hi, Roslyn. Welcome in. For all of our participants, just so you know, Roslyn is also on our tier 2 and tier 3 team. So she's gonna hang out with us too, join us. I'll probably prompt her to just like pop in to give us her wisdom, her knowledge too. So she's also joining us here today. So please feel free to ask her any questions as well in the chat. If I am demoing or if I'm doing anything, she can support too.
Thank you. I do apologize for having to join a little bit later.
Oh my gosh.
But glad to be here.
Yeah. Thanks, Rosalind. Take a little bit more time on this page and then I'll let you know kind of when we'll come back from our break and then we're gonna keep chugging along. We're gonna go into the next step of the process. Okay, so quick recap. We have made it through our whole school readiness, teaming, detect, and triage. So preparing our system, hopefully preparing our team. If not, just thinking about who is going to support this process that we're now talking about. And then step one, identifying students. So using different data sources if we choose to identify students who might need tier two support, and then being able to decide who is going to get tier two support, who might not meet our criteria or our decision rules. Again, just that reminder, this guide for step one, detect and triage, is going to be your friend with this process to get you set up. Step one is effort. It's going to take a little bit to kind of get this ready, get this going. But once you have it, once you know what data you're collecting, you have a good timeline to review that data, you start to get good at making decisions about who needs tier two, you become very fluent in this. It's going to take a little bit of an effort in the beginning. It does take some time to do this, but then once you're set up, you're going to be in a really, really good spot. So let's go ahead and we're going to take a break here. Let's do, what time is it here? Let's come back at like 25 after. So whatever your hour is, we'll come back at 25 after. So we'll get about a 10-minute break in, and then we're going to keep going. We'll jump in to step two. So I'll put in the chat, come back at 25 after. And if you have any questions during this time too, please feel free, put them in the chat, or you can unmute, chat with myself, chat with Roslyn, since she is here as well. And then we'll go ahead and we'll keep going. Thanks, everybody. Let's take about 10 minutes.
Hi guys, I do have one quick question. This is Bailey, if it's okay. I was kind of curious,
absolutely.
like we're kind of just starting. So for reference, our school is an approved public day school. So all of our students are 100% IEP students, social, emotional, behavioral, mental health challenges. So since we have kind of our clinical team in place and we feel pretty solid about that, but we're still just kind of starting to build the system, I was just hoping you could give like one bit of advice, like what would you guys prioritize first from the character strong lens to like really get traction quickly so we can kind of get going? I know like I think we feel good about our team. So like what would you recommend really starting with to prioritize?
Yeah. So do you feel good about, so you are in a unique situation. So kind of when I think about like specialized placement or schools or where we have all students who have services, right? So if you are in like a like kind of like behavior support setting only, if you are in kind of your type of space, you still have an MTSS system. It's just going to look different, right? Because your tier one is kind of a normal, like kind of your typical schools, like tier three potentially, but you still do have a system. And so kind of first, what I would say is, do you kind of already know, like what sources of data do you use? Now this gets a little tricky because everybody has an IEP. So some of your sources of data can be like student progress on their goals? Like, are they actually making progress? Do we see referrals decreasing for students or number of referrals? You can still use some of that like early warning system data. Yours is just going to be higher. Like your threshold is
Okay.
going to be higher. Your criteria ranges, your decision-making rules are probably going to be like higher up than what we would see kind of in like in like a normal setting, kind of a typical school setting. And that's okay. You can still have it that way. The other piece, so as we start going through supports, you might know right away, like I already know kind of what group of students would do really well on like this performance support, or I might want to incorporate that into like a behavior plan potentially if they have one, or I
Okay.
know that like we're lacking skill instruction in this area. So you might just very quickly tap into our skill supports. So when we're going over the interventions, I think sort of like two things. My first would be you should still have decision criteria, like still work on that and
Okay.
decide like how do you know when we're going to add these types of supports to what students are already getting. The second piece would be, are there any supports that we can identify right now that we can just implement right away? So as we're going through those, I would say kind of keep note of that. That would be a really good starting place for you, but also still be thinking about like, what does our data system look like and how do we use
Okay.
data to make decisions? Because you still should be like, you still should have a system. Even though you are like a specialized setting, you still should be running with MTSS. Your criteria just looks different. Yeah.
Okay, that makes total
Yeah.
sense to me. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is such a great question, Bailey. And I'm
Oh,
so
Yeah.
thank you.
excited
Yeah.
to have
Yeah.
Nicole's wisdom with that. So,
Yeah,
Also,
we're really
Bailey,
excited.
too, because you are in a specialized setting, things are just gonna all things are gonna look a little bit different for you. So I'll mention this to everyone. I'll mention this at the end of the training as well. But at any point, we do offer office hours for tier two. I'll
Oh,
go over this later,
okay.
but we offer office hours too. So like please ask questions today. Yes, like as we're going through and how it might look to implement in your system. You can also join those office hours. You can also always email us at support@characterstrong.com. So if you start implementing something and you're like, I don't know exactly how this would work in our system. Like we want to try to make it work, but we're unclear about it. Like please always feel free to reach out to us too, because you are in a unique setting, but like you can still do tier two. You can
Okay,
still do
great.
this.
Thank
You can
you.
still use things that just might look a little bit different.
Okay, awesome. And
Yeah.
it's even more complex because our school is elementary, middle school, and high school all in
Oh
one
yeah.
building.
Okay. So you have
So
yeah.
across
So
all the,
you okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so that is also unique in like what data might be most appropriate to look at, knowing that you're looking at like potentially K through 12.
Yeah.
And data looks different at elementary versus secondary. So yeah, I would say like quick start, quick win is get some students into some supports, like start
Okay.
practicing those as we talk about them, but then also that like readiness piece and that data decision piece and setting up a good data system is going to be really important, especially your criteria to like we want kids to move away from you. Like hopefully you're doing a great job, but we want kids out of that system.
Yes.
And so we want to make sure that you have some good supports in place so that we're moving kids like down the tiers and like out of that setting back to like their home school. So
Yes. That is
yeah,
always the ultimate goal to
yes,
go back to the home district. So
yes,
totally. Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
All right. Thank you guys so much. I'm
yeah,
enjoying this. So thank
yeah.
you.
You're welcome.
great. Thanks for joining us. Nicole, feel free if you need to run to the restroom, come back. I'm
Yeah,
here.
actually, I'm just gonna probably fill up my water real quick. So thanks, Rosalind. I will We'll take about 1 more minute to break and then we will come back together. So get a snack, refill your caffeine, your water, whatever you need to do. You'll notice that I will like progressively start drinking more caffeine as we're going and less water probably. So I have like 2 cups with me at all times. And then the more caffeine that I drink, I'll start to talk faster. So if I start talking really, really fast, somebody flag me in the chat and say, Nicole, slow it down.
I wonder too if it's like the truth of a deep dive because we have so much to cover
Yeah.
as well that,
Yes.
I
It's
find
good.
myself.
Maybe I need to be caffeinated for this. We do. We have a lot to cover. So we have about we have an hour and a half left with our time. So we're going to get into the next step of the process, and then we're going to keep going. Before we start, let's do, did I put one in here? I did. Otherwise, I was going to go into the site. Let's do another little connection opportunity before we jump in to content. Give ourselves a little like fun break because we're going through some heavy content here. So here is my connection opportunity for you. So we have connection games built in to actually all of our tiered curriculum. So if you're in our tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, we have connection games built in for you to utilize before you jump into content with students. So we model that in our trainings as well. So this is our would you rather. Would you rather only be able to communicate through text messaging or never be able to text someone again? One or two. Oh my gosh. I think I would personally choose two. I'm a talker, so if I couldn't text and I like was only forced to communicate not via text, via like words, actual communication, I think I would do fine with it. But some people are like, oh my gosh, absolutely not. I do see a lot of ones like, no, I would rather just text people. Rosalind, you said this is a tough one for you.
I think I've decided quite yet what it would be.
Yeah.
Probably a probably a one, to be honest. So
Yeah. And Tamika says, I hate talking on the phone. I don't mind. I really don't mind it. Can we use text audio messages? Okay, I'm a voice memo person. I send audio texts, like voice memos to my friends nonstop. They basically get a podcast from me probably on a weekly basis. Text, like typing text. Um, I can't stop when I send an audio message and then I get to the end, I'm like, oh my gosh, sorry, I just talked to you for 8 minutes and I probably could have sent this in a 3 sentence text, but instead you got a message. So I like that. I like that loop that loophole. Uh,
and this is
doesn't make
where
the
I think
call.
like if we are in a real support with our students,
Yeah.
I would even want them to move around the room, go to one
Mhm.
side versus the other.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
movement can be incorporated there.
Yeah. Yeah, the arrows here. So if this is one of our small group prompts, for instance, like you can have students move to the sides. I use these in trainings and I'll have adults move to different sides of the room and then like talk about like, why did you choose this? Can we have people across the room like meet up in the middle and talk to each other? Why did you choose like opposing sides? What's your reasoning? So a lot of versatility with our connection games. When I go through our skill support, I'll kind of show you they're built into the slide decks, but you can use them for adults, you can use them for students, you can use them wherever you would like. So appreciate your opinions and your answers to would you rather. Okay, so let's talk about step 2. So step 2 is define, analyze, and select. So let's quickly run through like the 3 kind of vocab here first, and then we'll jump into what this looks like. So first we are defining what is the need that the student has, that social, emotional, or behavioral need. Then we're going to analyze. I mentioned this idea of root cause earlier. We're going to identify why does this need exist? What is the root cause? Why do we see this need emerging and happening for the student? And then we select an intervention that is going to target that root cause. So once we know what the root cause is, we are then able to select an intervention to match that, to start to mitigate it, to start to reduce whatever it is that the student is potentially struggling with, like a decrease in something, and then or an increase in a certain skill or a certain behavior. So the flow looks like this. Define the need first, analyze and figure out why it exists. Based on the type of need, we select a support, and I'm going to go through this for you. So that first part is define. What we are defining here is first, what's getting in the way of that student's functioning? What do we need to decrease? The second thing is, what do we need to improve for that student? What is going to help with their daily functioning? So what skills or behaviors do we need to increase? And what are the dimensions of those different behaviors that we're seeing? So do we need to change the frequency, how often something is happening with the student, the duration, how long we are seeing or want to see a certain behavior, or the intensity of that behavior? Do we need to decrease the intensity of it? So we are looking at one of those dimensions, frequency, duration, or intensity, for what we are looking to decrease or increase. So we have to define those things. What are we actually seeing in the student? And then we analyze. And this is the root cause part. We call this a root cause analysis sometimes, or like layman's terms, we say like is it this or that? Is it this that's going on, or is it that that's going on with the student? So we are trying to understand why the need exists. So once we have defined the need, we analyze the root cause, and we are determining, is it a acquisition or a skill need that the student has, or is it a performance need that the student has? These are the two different types of needs that you are going to see with any student that might need tier 2. It's going to be one or the other. So let's define these and talk about the difference between the two and how we might know. So an acquisition need means that the challenges, the expectations, the demands of the environment for the student is greater than what they can do right now. So they do not yet have the skills, they don't have the knowledge, they're not able to meet those expectations or those challenges because they don't have the skills to do so yet. They don't have the knowledge to do so yet, and they're going to need some form of skill instruction. So this is does not have the skills. They cannot do the thing that we're asking them to do because they don't have the skills yet. A performance need is that the student does have the skills. They know how to do it. They're not doing it. So there is this gap between knowing what to do and how to do it, and we know that they know how to do it and what to do, but they're not actually doing it. They're not performing the skill, they're not engaging in the behavior, and so there's this gap between what we know that the student can do and them actually doing it or performing it. So they do have the skills, they do have the knowledge, but we're just not seeing them demonstrate those skills or that knowledge in certain settings. So I want to talk about kind of is it skill or is it performance, and how you might know or how you might determine, because this is where, one, it's super important, if we can, to get this right. It's okay if we get it wrong, and sometimes we do get it wrong, and that's okay because we can always change our mind. But if we can get this right, it's really then going to help us assign the correct support for the student. So if a student has a skill need, they cannot demonstrate that skill or that behavior in any environment. So we're not going to see it in literacy. We're not going to see it in math. We're not going to see it at school or at home. They cannot do it fluently in any environment. If they have a performance need, we've seen that skill somewhere. We've seen it with one teacher or educator, or we've seen it in one subject area, or we do see it at school, but the family doesn't see it at home, or vice versa. Or the family might say, like, student's fine at home. We don't have this issue. The student does it. So there is evidence that they can do it and they know how to do it, but they're just not doing it in all environments or in all settings. If it's a skill need, the student doesn't know an alternative. They think that this is the only way, and this is the only way that they know what they're doing in that situation or in that setting. It's the only way they know how to behave, and they don't know kind of what they should be doing. So they can't really say an alternative behavior. They can't talk about like, oh, I should have done this, or like, I really know that this is what I need to do and I just didn't do it. With the performance needs, students are very good about explaining what they should do. They know what to do. They can explain it to you. They can even explain like what other students might or should have been doing in a situation, but they're not doing it. They're just not motivated to do it, but they can tell you the alternative. They can explain it to you. They could even demonstrate it for you if you said like, well, how would you have responded? Or what behavior would you have done? And they can actually do it for you. That is a performance need. The last piece to really know if it's a skill need is that even if we provide the student with support or we remind them right now about what they need to do, they're still not able to engage in it or do it. So when we give them a cue, when we give them a correction, when we give them some form of support, they're still not able to do it because they haven't learned the skill yet. They haven't gained the knowledge yet. So no matter how much we remind them, prompt them, cue them, they still can't do it. That is different for performance. If we can remind the student what to do, if we can cue them, if we can prompt them and they're able to do it, we know that that's more likely a performance need. So these are the things you're going to look at in that student to say, is it a skill-based need or is it a performance-based need? So Rosalind put in the chat, if you can think of students that have an acquisition need and like how you knew that, or if you're thinking about a student right now that you have in the back of your mind and you're like, I thought it was a skill need, but now that you're explaining this, I actually think it's a performance need. That can also happen where we tend to default and assume that it's a skill-based need all the time. We always assume that the student needs instruction. They need to see the counselor. They need more group time. They need more minutes. They need X, whatever it looks like to provide the student with instruction. We tend to make that assumption more often than not. And you're actually, what we know from like research is that more students will have a performance need than a skill-based need. But we always default to like, they need more instruction, they need more skill, they need to work with the counselor, they need to be in a small group. You're actually going to see more students that have a performance need. So as you're thinking about this, I'm going to encourage you, think about one or maybe two students like in the back of your mind where you're like, are we getting this wrong? Have we thought about this all the way? Have we looked for these different pieces of evidence to really know, is it a skill or is it a performance-based need? So what I want to show you is in the site, what this looks like to match a student, identify their need, and then we're going to match them to a support. So again, I mentioned, if you do not have access to the delivery dashboard right now, you don't have permission, don't worry. This is being recorded. You can watch me model this. You can come back to it later once you have permission, but I'm going to show you how to add a student and how we begin this process. So I am going to click on this Students tab at the top. And if you have added any students in, obviously they will appear for you. And I'm going to add a student into our system to show you how this is built in and how the system is going to support you. So I'm going to add Nicole in our deep dive, birthday. Does anybody want to pick a grade level? Anyone? Anyone? Shout it out, put it in the chat.
I'll see what's in the chat first. The first one that puts it in the chat. 10th grade. Thank you, Tamika.
Thanks, Tamika. Okay, let's go 10th grade. I'm going to submit that student. So now once I've submitted the student, you're like, oh my gosh, they disappeared. Where are they? All you need to do is search that student's name in this little box right here. and I'm going to look for, there's obviously a lot of Nicoles. I do a lot of tier 2 trainings. So now I need to find my Nicole deep dive. Here we are. Okay. So when I click on Nicole, Nicole's going to have nothing, right? Because I've simply just added Nicole into the system. And what we're talking about right now is what type of need does the student have? So I'm going to go here to this button that says identify the student's need. And I'm going to start the matching process. So right here is what we just talked about. I am going to indicate, does the student have a performance need or do they have a skill need? I want you to ignore attendance just for a second. Do they have a performance or a skill-based need? Would anyone like to pick? What type of need would you like our student to have today? Performance or skill? Either first person in the chat or first person to unmute. Should our student have skill? Okay, so our student is going to have a
Andy and
skill-based
Reagan.
need. So they lack those skills to meet the expectations. We do not see it. We know that they need to learn the skill and they need to gain some knowledge. So I'm going to click next and I'm going to pause. Okay, I'm going to pause where we are. We have identified that student's need, and I'm just going to leave this here and go back into our slides. So you are identifying the student need. You are saying, is it a performance-based need? Is it a skill-based need? And then what the system is going to do is it's going to now provide you with the ability to select the support based on that need that best matches what we're seeing with the student. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we actually talk about the skill supports and the performance supports, how you know which one is most appropriate. But now we have to select. So we're going to select either a skill support if the student has a skill-based need, or a performance support if the student has a performance-based need. So I'm going to go back in. Because we picked skill, now I'm going to pick, well, which of the 4 skill supports is going to help this student the most? Again, I'm not going to explain how we know this just yet, but I'm just going to have, again, somebody, if you want to put in the chat or unmute, coping, regulation, self-management, or relationships. You can see a little description underneath. If that is helpful, just for the moment right now, I'm going to pick this just to demonstrate. Which of the 4 should we go with? Coping, regulation, self-management, or relationships?
Regulation.
Regulation. All right, thanks, Bailey.
Thanks, Bailey.
So we will go with regulation. I'm going to finish this out just to show you. We'll talk about these other steps in a little bit. But what it will then prompt me to do is I can identify individuals who are going to progress monitor. Don't worry, we're going to talk about that later. And then I can either assign the student to this small group. I can create a new group. I can skip the group assignment for right now. Or if I already have some groups for regulation going, as you see we do in our Giant Character Strong account, I can add them to a group that already exists. So I'm going to create a new group just for right now, and I'm just gonna have one student in it, and that's okay. I can add more later. And this is gonna be my 10th regulation group. We will start it on the 7th, and I am going to be the facilitator. So this is gonna let you set up the group, the students that are gonna be in it. You can identify who will collect the data. And when I click next, I can add more students if I would like to. So I can add Roslyn in this group. We'll see if it'll let me. Roslyn might already be in a group. It'll flag if Roslyn's already in there. Great. All right, so now I have my group. So we're going to talk about those other parts of the process that I just showed you, but I wanted to get to the point where you can see that we identified the student's need, We picked a support based on that need, and now the student is in that support. I am going to throw a little caveat into this about attendance. So I just asked you, does the student have a skill-based need or a performance-based need? If the student has an attendance-based need, meaning they are chronically absent, I don't care if they have a skill or performance need at school because they're not at school. So if we are going through this process and we're like, well, actually, the student's not here, they are chronically absent, we are going to say that it is an attendance need first before we try to do anything else, because I cannot provide the student with a skill support or a performance support if they're not at school. So you saw me say, like, we're going to skip attendance for right now. This is me coming back to it to say, if the student's not there, address their attendance need first. And then once they're there, you can say, if the student needs additional support, is it a skill need or a performance need? And then we can assign them to the right support. So I want to pause there for just a second. Questions about a performance-based need versus a skill-based need, or how the system is going to walk you through picking the need and then eventually support. I'm gonna give us a second here.
Yeah, I don't see any questions yet in the chat, but I'm also wondering too, Nicole, whether this is the time where some of the work that we've done when we're doing the detecting and the triaging, some of that work, that data might be helpful in this step too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk through that detect and triage piece, and you're collecting, you have various sources of data, right? You might have a screener, you might have behavior referral data, you're obviously going to have attendance data, the nomination or referral data from educators. Those are spaces that you can look at, data that you can look at to kind of help you start to decide, is it a skill or is it a performance-based need? You can also get that information like from educators. You can also get that information from students. So thinking about, if it's not very obvious that the student has a skill or performance need, where can we look? And where can we gather that information to try to make our, like, the best choice that we can? You can always change your mind, right? We can always go back and remake the decision if we quickly realize, like, we thought it was skill, but it's actually performance, or we thought it was performance and we're now realizing actually the student doesn't have the skills. You can go back. But again, if we can get it right, kind of the first time around, or as close to right as we can, we're going to save ourselves some time, and we're going to get the student the support that they need and they actually need, that meets that root cause faster.
And I'm thinking that maybe what means this is a process that a team can do together as well. Meaning that, if you can do it in your tier 2 team, doing that matching and that decision making together as a team.
Yes. Yeah. Also, why your team cannot be one person, right? One person is not going to be able to either access all of the data or access the humans who have the information about the student. This is where, like, that roles and responsibilities can come into play too. Like, who might be responsible for getting the information that's going to help our team make this decision about a student and assigning them to the right support. So again, these first 2 steps, I tell you, step 1 takes some time. Step 2 also takes some time to know which support is going to be best for the student. How are we going to determine that? What is that process going to look like in our system, so that we can get it right? And you'll get really good at it. I can promise you, you'll start to get really fluent in it. It's going to feel hard in the beginning. It's going to feel challenging to maybe pick and, like, know where to access the information in the data. But once you do it and you get good at it, like, you will just soar through these first couple steps of the process. I can promise you that, because I've seen it happen with a lot of teams. It's a lot in the beginning. It's a lot to figure out. It's a lot to coordinate. It's a lot to get good at. And then once you are, you're going to do great with it. You're going to get students into supports. You're going to have students go through that support. So you're going to start exiting them from tier 2, and you're going to have a really nice, sustainable system. But it does take a little bit of work to get going with this and make those kind of right decisions for students in the beginning. So what I'm going to do is bring us through an example student to help kind of demonstrate this, and we can kind of talk about it. So we are going to use Aaron as our example student. So if you are at a tier 2 team, Aaron comes up at the tier 2 team meeting. What we know about Aaron is that Aaron is creative and athletic, is struggling academically. We're seeing some struggles in reading and in math. We might have access to Aaron's grades. Okay, we'll say that Aaron is our 10th grade student. We see that Aaron is struggling in reading and math based on grades. Is missing many days of school. That's pretty vague. Maybe it's chronically absent, maybe it's not, but is just missing some school days. Also on our screener is high risk for externalizing and internalizing behaviors. And we know from our behavior referrals that he is yelling at peers when he's frustrated, when he's angry, and he's gotten multiple referrals for kind of this like same behavior over a certain amount of time. So this is the data that we have on Aaron. Do you have any Aarons in your system? Have any students like this? Do you notice, can you think of a student who might be like Aaron or has kind of similar data where we're seeing some concerns with behavior? Maybe it's now starting to impact academics and participation in academics. We might see some attendance concerns popping up. Not all students are going to have concerns in all of these areas, but if you have any students like Aaron, thanks for the heart, Roslyn. I see that. Or you can put a check mark. You can raise your hand and say, yes, we have students like Aaron. So if we are following that define, analyze, and select, the first thing we have to do for Aaron is define what's getting in the way of Aaron's functioning. What do we need to do to improve Aaron's functioning, and what's our concern? What is the dimension of this that is concerning? Anybody willing to share what's getting in the way? What do we want to decrease for Aaron based on that information that I shared about him? What might we want to decrease for Aaron?
I'm wondering if it may be helpful to go back to the last slide, Nicole.
Yeah, for sure. What are the concerns that we have? What are those behaviors that we might want to decrease?
Maybe the outward expression of his frustration and the lack of emotional regulation that he's displaying with kind of the yelling at the peers rather than kind of internalizing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are seeing first we're seeing high risk for externalizing behavior. So we know something's happening, and we have these referrals that are saying yelling at peers, getting really frustrated and angry pretty easily is not demonstrating emotion regulation skills. So what we would say is that emotionally kind of dysregulated. We want to decrease that anger, that frustration, and those associated behaviors. We want to increase strategies to manage or regulate those emotions. And maybe our concern is intensity right now. Like, it is intense. Like when Aaron gets frustrated, when Aaron gets mad, it's pretty intense behavior. So again, when we are in our system and we're going through that matching process. So when we were deciding, does the student have a skill-based need, or do they have a performance-based need? Where might you place Aaron? So in the chat, do you believe that Aaron has a skill-based need potentially from that information, or a performance-based need? Now you have like very limited information that I gave you. So performance or skill, what might you just throw one out there? There's no right or wrong answer for this one. Bailey says skill. So we are seeing with Aaron that potentially because he's not using those emotion regulation strategies in situations that perhaps he doesn't have the skill to be able to do so. Now, to kind of counter that, let's say that two educators are like, well, I've actually seen Aaron get really frustrated in my class, and he has either taken a break or he has used like a breathing strategy or he has like asked for help and support when he's gotten frustrated. That's a strategy. That's a skill. So if we saw that like it was happening across all educators, all classes with a variety of different peers, we could say, yeah, this is a skill need where Aaron might need instruction. Or if we're saying, well, sometimes he's okay. Sometimes he can regulate his emotions. Sometimes he is able to do this skill. We could say it's actually a performance need, and we're going to have to put something in place to help him use the skills that he has. So this is the process that we're going to go through for students, where we're going to say, here's the data we have, here's the information that we know, and now we have to decide what is the issue and what type of need is it for that student. Once we do that, we can then select a support. Okay, so this is kind of the conversation that we would have about a student as a team engaging in this process. And again, kind of back into our system here, you can add that student in as you're having the conversation about them. You can think through that skill versus that performance. And then now we're going to talk about what it looks like, what the different skills look like. So questions about that process, about having those conversations before I bring us into step 3. Nothing in the chat. Okay. So once we have define, analyze, and we select a support, we are going to develop a plan. Now, I'm just going to tell you when I added here, let me just quickly go back to Nicole. When we talk about adding a plan, or when we talk about what it means to create a plan, there's a couple things that we are going to be looking for. So first, we need to know what are the core components of the intervention that we're going to provide the student, or the type of support we're going to provide the student. We need to assign responsibility for who is going to do those core components. So who is going to provide the skill support? Who is going to lead the performance-based support? Who is going to be the lead of their attendance support? And then we need to decide, when are we going to start this with the student? When are we going to progress monitor and collect data on the student? This is our plan. What you saw me do when I added the start date, when I added the facilitator of the group, when I added who is going to collect progress monitoring data, that is your plan. It is built into the system. So you don't necessarily have to decide you have to decide the who and the when, but everything that you need to implement is going to be in the system. Your curriculum's going to be there, your support resources are going to be there, your progress monitoring tools are going to be there, your fidelity checks are going to be there. So everything that we would include in this plan development, we have done that for you. Why we still include this as a step, though, is to say all these things need to be done, right? All the core components have to be implemented, and you need to know who is doing it, when we're doing it, and why we're doing all of those things. That's part of that plan development, but it's already built into the system for you. So I go really quickly through this step because it's done. You have the plan. You just have to implement it, which is what we're going to talk about next, is what it actually looks like to implement all of these different supports for students. Okay, so when I say step 3, develop a plan, it is, let me go back. Assigning a start date, assigning facilitators, who's going to collect data, having a plan for when and how the things are going to get done to get the student that support. So this step is quick, right? We're already in the system. It's going to be identified for you. You're just going to keep, you're going to identify start date, facilitators, who's going to collect data. And now you're going to see what it looks like to implement. Rosalind, do you have something
I was
that
just
you
gonna
wanted to
make a comment about how,
add?
like, when I was thinking through what the purpose is, right, for us to be able to have this, I wonder if that
Yeah.
also is for like the whole team to have a clear view about what's going on,
Yes.
what groups are starting,
Yes.
what supports are available, how many
Yes.
students actually receiving the support. So
Mhm.
all the way to, the administrators within the team to be able to tell, like, with a quick glance, what is going on for the whole tier.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So part of your develop a plan, yes, we're talking like what's kind of the plan for this individual student, but we're going to have multiple individual students who are in a support. And so part of this, like, develop the plan is there anything like systematically that we need to consider or change or do? Do we have multiple groups that are going to be happening? Do we have 6 kids who are going to be on a performance support? And what does that mean for our educators? What does that mean for our team? When do we need to be checking in on the progress data? So this develop a plan for individual students is really built into the system. But when you're thinking like systematically, is there anything we as adults also need to plan for or potentially like change within our system or our structures? So Rosalind, I appreciate you bringing that up because it is a little bit of both, right? Plan for the individual student, but also plan for your team, plan for your system if you need to. And obviously, what's built in is going to help you to do that. So everybody always gets very excited about our next step because this is where we're going to talk about those supports. So step 4 is implement and monitor progress. What we're going to talk about first is implementation. What we're talking about is actually implementing the intervention or the support for those students. So we're going to talk about how do we implement a skill support, what are and how do we implement performance-based supports and who implements those, and then also the attendance-based supports. And then we're going to come back to the steps. So we're going to kind of like step away. Like we're in step 4 right now, but I promise we'll come back to those steps as well. But this is going to be like a pretty big chunk talking about implementation of the supports. So we're going to start with the skill support first. Also, we picked that one for our My Pretend Nicole Deep Dive student. So we're going to talk about skill support first. And what our skill building supports are is these are small group curricula that is designed to help students gain knowledge and also learn skills and apply skills that they are learning to be able to meet those expectations and meet those demands. So there are 2 different grouping, like kind of groups of skill supports. Powered Up is the title of our elementary pre-K through 5 curricula, and Group is the title of our secondary curricula for grades 6 through 12. And then within both Powered Up and Group are 4 skill building areas. We have 4 curricula available to meet different skill needs. So the first one is coping. This is for students who struggle with stress, anxiety, or sadness. They need coping strategies or like internalizing skills. Regulation is for students who are easily frustrated, easily angry. They don't have those emotion regulation skills. We're seeing a lot of externalizing emotional concerns or behaviors. Relationships is for students who have difficulty with social skills and difficulty interacting appropriately with others. They struggle with just like conversation or communication skills, conflict resolution skills, even just like connecting with peers. So those social skills. Then self-management is for students who really have difficulty with executive functioning skills and right now are requiring support from others to be able to do those things that would be considered executive functions. And so we want to give them the tools and the strategies to be able to do it independently. When I go in to show you where this is, I'm going to show you the differences, like how you know which one is a elementary support versus a secondary support, but know that all 4 of these areas are in elementary and in secondary. But we will get there in our explore time, I promise. So let's kind of talk through the core components and how we have developed our skill support and what it looks like to implement. So first and foremost, students are going to participate in direct instruction. That is the group sessions. They're going to be provided with instruction to gain knowledge, to learn skills and practice skills through direct instruction. And they also develop a plan for how are they going to use their skills that they're learning? When are they going to use it? What opportunities are we going to help them to be able to apply their skills? So they're going to develop a plan for this is what I'm learning in my group time, and this is when and how I'm going to use those skills to support me in those times that I am struggling. The second piece is a school-based support person or a school mentor. This is something that happens daily where they are meeting with the student is meeting with this adult, and this adult is helping them to apply those skills and what they're learning beyond the sessions. So they are kind of standing in as a person who's going to remind and support the student to use those skills so they can get a lot of good practice opportunities and repetitions with using their skills. The last component is what we consider family support, where families are going to be learning alongside their student, and they are going to help with students applying their skills outside of school. So one of the things I mentioned earlier is with a skill need, if a student truly has a skill-based need or a skill deficit, they cannot do the skill across multiple settings. So if the student really truly has a skill need, the family is also not seeing that skill at home. And so what we're doing here is we're helping that family to learn about the skill and how to support the student to use the skill at home. So we're going to teach the student at school, but we're also going to give the family a resource and information and learning to help the student at home, because that student is likely also struggling at home because they do not have the skill. They don't have the ability to do it. So we're going to help them at school, and we are also going to support them at home as well. So what I want to do is I'm going to walk through this instructional model first, then I'm going to go in, I'm going to show you kind of where this instructional model lives and how it's outlined for a session. So this is the same model for all of our sessions. Start is making sure that we are orienting the student to what they're going to be learning for the day. We are kind of doing some like review of what they learned in the previous session. We are getting students ready to learn. We're doing like a temperature check with students. We are getting them, this is really like preparing for instruction. Connect is those connection games, connection opportunities to build relationship between you and the students, students to students. The would you rather text only for communication, or would you rather like never be able to text again? That is an example of a connection game that we would do in this piece. The learn is direct instruction. That is where students are learning the knowledge, they are gaining the skills. That is going to be like, that's the meat of the lesson. Exit is giving students kind of their homework or their opportunity to practice their skills outside of the session or use their plan that they're developing. It's going to depend on the session that they're in. And then extend is that school mentor support and the family support. So start, connect, learn, exit, extend. This is the same for every single lesson. So you can kind of watch and follow with me. I'll just like give you a preview. I'm going to give you some time to look through a lesson. But where I'm going to show you where this is there's two different places. I'm going to demonstrate on this student that I added, but you're going to explore in the intervention library. So you can access our curriculum either if you want to add a student in, you can do it that way. But for Explore, you can also go into the intervention library. So here is our curriculum. So for this, we picked regulation and we are in 10th grade. So first, there's always going to be your delivery resources. This is going to help your facilitator to prepare for understanding what is this group about, how and what am I going to be teaching students, and then any materials that I'm going to need for facilitation, student-facing materials, group-facing materials, anything that you're going to need to facilitate this session. And then I want to show you in a session what that like start, connect, exit, extend looks like. So your start routines, your connection opportunities are going to be built into your slide deck. So here are your start routines: temperature check, review group agreements, go over homework, review. We call this a to-do challenge or a mission. We are going to do that connection opportunity. So let me make this bigger. I'm going to show you what this one is. So we're going to reveal 3 different prompts. We're going to share an answer to one prompt. Do not tell us what prompt you are answering, and the group is going to guess which of the 3 questions you are responding to. So, Roslyn, do you mind demoing this with me? So I'll ask you to respond to one of these prompts, but don't tell me which one you're responding to. What would your answer be?
Huh. This is hard. Okay.
If someone wants to share in the chat.
Sorry.
So you have to share a book, but you can't tell me which prompt. So my answer would be Book Lovers. That is the book. That's my answer. And you would have to guess which one of these, 1, 2, or 3, was Book Lovers, a book that made me laugh, a book that was slow to get into, or a book that I thought had the best ending. Douglas says Dune. Oh, Douglas.
I don't think it's 1, actually.
Oh, it is 1. It is a book that made me laugh.
Really?
Douglas, I'm going to guess that Dune was a book that was slow to get into. My brother forced me to read Dune, and I'm going to be honest, I know that people love that book more than anything. I hated it. I hated that whole book. Douglas, which prompt were you referring to? I'm guessing number 2. But maybe you're going to say a different one. Number 2.
It is number 2.
Yes, it's so slow to get into, and then it's so slow for the rest of the book too. Douglas, you probably disagree. If you're a lover of Dune, we can talk later about that. Okay, so this is an example of our connection game. Okay, so it's built into your deck. Then we're going to jump into what we consider learn. Right now, this is the direct instruction. So students are going to follow along with the slides. I'm just going to click through so you can see. So students are going to follow along with the slides. The educator facilitating this has a facilitator guide linked here that is going to follow along with those slides so that facilitator knows, what am I explaining here? What is the activity? What are the directions that I need to give students? How do I define this vocabulary word like regulation? So this is going to give that facilitator the directions of what they need to do to be able to facilitate the content on those slides. And then students are going to follow along in the slides. Some sessions, depending on the topic, will also have student materials. So for this one, students are going to access their journal. This is you're going to see this a lot in secondary where they are taking notes for themselves. They are going to make sure they have their to-do challenge ready. They can do their temperature check. This will look a little bit different in the fall because we're updating things, but you're going to see student materials, facilitator guide, your learn slides, right? That students will follow along with. Then your exit, I'm going to click all the way to the end. Exit is the to-do challenge, that's what it's called for secondary, or your mission, that is what it's called for elementary. They are given a little piece of homework or they're given something to do in the week before the next session. So for this example, their exit activity is this week, you're going to try to notice your like behavior emotional switches, what like turns on that emotion or that behavior for you. Have a conversation with those trusted adults about your switches and what causes them. That's the exit. Extend, you're going to see extend at the bottom here. This is that mentor, that school mentor, and that family support. So these pieces of communication, you can copy these directly from the site. You can paste them in a text, in an email, however you want to get it to those adults. And what we are giving the adult here is this is what your student learned in their group today. Please support them with their challenge that they were given in their exit, and anything else that that person might need to know to support the student to be able to generalize their skills, to practice the skills. So you have this communication for that exit. Okay. So what I want to give you an opportunity to do is be able to explore a session. So you can see those different components. So I'm going to come back to our slide here. I'm going to give you some directions and I'll show you where to go to access this. So the way that you're going to access is through our intervention library. So if you're interested in looking at anything, any support that we talk about right now, on your left-hand panel in that intervention library, you're going to be under our skill supports right now. So this is where you can go and you're going to be able to access any curriculum area and the grade bands associated with the grade levels that your building is or that you purchased. So I can access obviously pre-K through 12. If you are just secondary, you're only going to see 6 through 8. If you're just elementary, you're only going to see pre-K through 5 on your account. If you are every grade level, you're going to see everything. What you're going to notice are some different naming conventions. So if you have access to pre-K through 12, you're going to notice in this drop down different names of the curriculum. So what I like to say is the simpler the word, that's our elementary title for the curriculum. The more complicated the word, that is our secondary curriculum. So calm is regulation for elementary. Regulation is regulation for secondary. Coping is secondary skill support. It is called courage for elementary. So depending on your grade level, you might not see all. Thank you, Roslyn, for putting that in the chat. So if you want to download that and know, like, I want to look at this one specifically and what it is, you can go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to ask you just for our explore time to kind of give you all the same to look at is in that intervention library, in the skill supports, you are going to go to either regulation if you're secondary or calm if you're elementary. You're going to look at session 3 for whatever grade band you would like. So let me go back. So if I am under calm for elementary, I can look at pre-K through K, 1 through 2, or 3 through 5. And then I'm going to look at session 3 under calm or regulation for whatever grade band. And I want you to just take a look at a facilitator guide, click through those slides, kind of see that instructional model that's built in, look at that extend communication for the family and the mentor. And I'm going to give you like about 5 minutes, just if you want to look at something else in the skill supports, go right ahead. If you like really have one in mind, you're like, I actually would rather look at self-management instead, go ahead. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to explore. Again, I want to use this time to answer any questions that you might have about the skill supports as well. And then we'll come back together. Okay. Perfect. All right. Let me see. Did any questions also come through in the chat? Let's take, we'll take about 5 minutes here first. And then if we need a little bit more time, we can do that. But no questions in the chat so far. Okay, let's take some time. Go ahead, explore those skill supports in that intervention library, and then we will come back together. Okay, we're going to take about one more minute. I know this is not a ton of time. There's a lot in the skill supports, but we're going to keep going because we have two more supports to chat about and a couple more steps of our process. So we'll take about one more minute. Again, questions that you have about skill supports, any of these components, that instructional model, any questions that you have about facilitation or about those different parts, please let us know too. All right, so we're going to go ahead and come back together and we're going to now talk about performance-based support. So those skill-based supports, those are for students who we identified. They have a skill-based need. They don't know what to do. They don't have the skill yet, and we're going to have to provide them with direct instruction in order to learn that skill. The other side of that is if a student has a performance-based need, we're going to provide them with a performance-based support. So our performance-based supports, again, this is for students with a performance-based need. And what these are designed to do is encourage and motivate the student to use the skills that they have, right? So they have the knowledge already. They have the skills already. And what we're going to do is we are going to put an environmental support in place that's going to help them to use those skills that they have, to use the knowledge that they have, because we know that they're able to do it. They just need support to be able to do it. So I just want to quickly review kind of some common elements that you're going to see throughout all of the performance-based supports that really make a performance-based support work. So when we say like an environmental support, we are manipulating or changing things within the environment that's going to change the student's behavior or get them to do this skill. So what you're going to notice amongst kind of all of the performance supports are some commonalities. First, students are going to be goal setting. They have a either daily goal or a weekly goal that they are trying to meet by engaging in the behavior. We have some planning for adults and some staff support because these performance supports, environmental supports, they're going to be done, I'm just going to tell you, in the classroom. Because where is the environment that the student is in all day? It is the classroom. So these are not pull-out supports. These are delivered in the classroom environmental supports. So there is support for staff, and staff plays quite a role in the implementation of these. Because students know what to do, in the supports, there's going to be cues, reminders, corrections, prompts built in. We need a way of reminding the student to use the skill or the behavior that they have. There's going to be a lot of kind of relational nudges or capitalizing on the relationship between the student and that educator to encourage the student to use their skills. We want to make sure that we are recognizing and reinforcing the student. When we see that they do the thing, they engage in the behavior, they use the skill, we are providing them with reinforcement. And then we're going to debrief. We're going to provide feedback to that student about how it went. Did anything make it hard for them to engage in the skill? Is there anything that we noticed about the situation that we can help improve, or we can help the student kind of like the next time that they might need to use this skill? So you're going to see these types of things built in to all 6 of the performance supports. And these are the 6. I'm actually going to bring us into a different slide, but I just want to kind of outline that there are 6 performance-based supports that you have access to. And how you choose which one is most appropriate is based on the motivation of the student. what is it that helps the student to engage in the behavior, or what changes their behavior? We call this a behavior change mechanism, and that is a very fancy way of saying, what are we going to change in the student's environment to change their behavior? So what are we going to use to change the student's behavior? So I'm going to give you an example first, and then I'll talk through the rest. So if students do really well and they demonstrate the behavior, or they're motivated to do the behavior by earning access to a rewarding experience, or earning access to like a thing or a tangible or a person, earning access to something, if that is motivating to the student, and we know if we put something like that in place, the student will do the behavior, they would benefit from the performance support that's called the behavior contract. So what we do and what we change in the environment is we give them access to something that is rewarding for them, or that they're motivated by. And how we do that is through the behavior contract support. If students are motivated by, they do really well and change their behavior when they're provided with adult attention, check in, check out is going to be that performance support that we're going to look at for a student. If they are motivated by escape, they like to get out of that thing, that task, and they're already an escape artist, they're already getting out of it in some way, ClassPass is going to be the support for that student. If they do well when we give them a prompt, we remind the student to do the thing, to do the behavior, we remind them to encourage, a pre-correction plan is going to be the best match for a student that really needs that prompting or that reminder to do what we need them to do. If students benefit from consistency across the various environments, this is going to be the school family communication system. So this is for students who do really well when school and family is very aligned on their expectations for the student, and that the family is willing and able and available to support the student, their behavior at home, and then the family also provides the reinforcement at home. So students who do really well when family is involved, this is going to be school family communication. And the last one is students who do well when they are asked to, or they are able to reflect and self-reflect or self-record on their behavior. So they check in with themselves. Am I doing the expectation? Am I following the expectation? Am I doing the behavior I'm supposed to? So students who do well with that self-reflection, we would suggest self-monitoring. So all 6 of these, I'm going to go back into our intervention library, performance-based supports. I'm going to click in there, and you're going to see a drop down at the top and your access to all 6 of those supports. I want to orient you to what's on the page as well. So every page you're going to see an overview video. Because we only have 3 hours together, I am not overviewing all 6 of these for you. So you will see an overview video. You will see an implementation script. What type of student is appropriate for this? How do we do it? What is the research behind this support? What does it look like to kind of do this well? What's an example of implementing well, or a non-example of implementation, and how do we do this? As well as anything you need to get it set up. So this is a behavior contract. So we have examples of behavior contracts that you can download, you can change, you can manipulate. So different tools that you can use. There is a Fidelity tool, which you can use, but I'm also going to show you where Fidelity is built into our system to track it. And then this menu of direct behavior ratings, that's going to help you with progress monitoring for a student on a behavior, a performance-based support. So again, you're figuring out what behavior are we trying to decrease, or what are we trying to increase for the student with them being on this support. So what I want you to do is go into the intervention library, into the performance-based supports, and what I want you to look at is one support that I just named that you were like, I've never heard of that, or that sounds like something that we could use in our system, or I know we have students that do really well when they're motivated by something rewarding, or they do really well when they get access to something. And I want you to just pick one to look at. I'm going to ask you to share in the chat which one is like standing out to you the most. Which performance-based support might you be interested in that you want to spend this next couple minutes exploring? So of those 6 that I mentioned, I'm going to just go to this drop-down menu. Behavior contracts, check and check out, ClassPass, pre-correction plans, school family communication system, or self-monitoring. Go ahead and drop in the chat which one of those 6 do you want to get a little bit more information about, that you want to explore, and maybe watch the overview video or look at the implementation script. Which of the 6 would you like to use for your explore time? Let me pull this back up and then I'll come back so you can look at all 6. Which one are you most interested in learning more about? Rosalind says self-monitoring. Amy ClassPass. Jenna says behavior contracts. Love it. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to give you some time. Intervention library, performance supports. I want you to pick one that you are going to do a little bit more exploring of for a couple minutes. Then I'm going to hit on attendance supports and show you what's in there. And then we're going to finish out our process. We're still in the tier 2 process. We did not forget. So let's take a couple minutes and then we'll come back together. We'll take about 30 more seconds in those performance supports. And then we'll go through a little bit about attendance, and we're going to finish out learning about kind of the final steps of that process, and I'll model for you again where that is in the system. Okay, let's chat about attendance supports. So there are two different supports that you have access to in the system to address students who are chronically absent. And the two different supports, we have what we consider a student-facing support, and we have a family-facing support. So attendance issues either reside in the student, which means that the student is not attending because of something that's going on with the student. They are avoiding something at school, or they're trying to get something outside of school that is more appealing to them, so they're not coming to school. Or sometimes we know that the issue actually resides within the family. The family is having difficulty getting their student to school. The student would come to school, or maybe there's not issues that the student is experiencing. It's not a student-based issue. It's really the family that is having difficulty. Or there's factors that are like residing in the family that's making it difficult for the student to come to school. So we have two different supports, one that is student facing and one that is family facing. So I'm actually going to talk about this actually in the site because I think it's going to be a little bit easier than the slides. So first is that student-facing support, and it is called Connection. So when you see this drop down at the top, you see connections or collaborations. Connections is the student-facing, collaborations is the family-facing. And in order to begin, you click on this implement for either one. And what you're going to notice is that the system is going to walk you through a 3-step process. It's going to be the same for the student facing or the family. You're going to see a 3-step process that you're going to follow. So what you will have access to is within each step, first it's going to explain to you what it is. So what is this support? What are the steps of the process that is in this learn drop down right here? And then for each step, there's going to be either some tasks that your team is going to complete, some data collection that you might be engaging in, meetings that you're going to have with relevant adults. Obviously, if it's a family-facing support, you're going to be meeting with the family. So you are going to follow within each step. So for instance, this example is the first step in the student support is connect. So this is going to walk you through what you're going to be doing within this connect step. Here, you are actually developing a connect plan for the student. So that's what you're going to be doing in this step. And it's going to explain to you how we're going to connect with the student, how we're going to communicate with the student, how we're actually going to go about making those connections. And then we develop a plan. That's this first step. When I click next, it's going to walk me through the next step. So for student-facing support, it is assess. We are assessing, is the student trying to get something wanted outside of school, or is a student trying to avoid something unwanted at school? And that's why they're not attending. So again, it's going to walk you through collecting information to make that determination about the student. So what is it? What is the reason why we're seeing that that student is chronically absent? Again, it's going to walk you through like very incrementally exactly how you're going to go through this process, what information you're going to gather, what interviews you might be doing, what plans you might be creating. And then for the last step, either support or for the family facing, how are we supporting the family? It helps you to develop that support plan to treat that chronic absenteeism. So For the student-facing support, if the student is avoiding something unwanted, it's going to walk you through the steps to creating a plan to helping the student come to school and get things that they want at school. Or I'm going to click on this other one. If the student, vice versa. This was for unwanted. They're avoiding something unwanted. So we're going to make it more, we are going to set them up so that that unwanted thing is mitigated, or we can help them deal with the unwanted thing. Or if the student is trying to get something outside of school that they want, how can we make school more appealing so that they want to be there? So kind of based on what's going on with a student, it's going to have those two different plans. You're going to see this same step-by-step process. I'm going to click back for collaborations, that family-facing support as well. The difference that I want to mention is that there is a family, like 3-step process for the family that is a push plan where we're going to push on the family. So we're going to go through that connect, educate, collaborate. For the family, it's going to look very similar to that student-facing support, but oriented towards family. And then you are going to see this additional educator support or pull plan. And what this looks like is the educators are pulling the student to school. We are going to do something that's going to help support getting the student to school while we are also pushing on the family, and we're developing a plan to support that family to get the student to school. So again, each one is going to walk you through the 3 steps that you're going to follow in order to create these attendance plans for students. So, as much as I wish we had endless time, I'm going to skip your exploration of attendance because there is a lot in there. And so I always say that is a really good one to go after this deep dive, to go into an exploration time, because we know that attendance is a major concern and most systems have some attendance work going. And so I like to kind of give you like my piece of homework after the deep dive is go into those attendance supports and see how it might align with the work that you're already doing to support attendance. That's your challenge after today. That's your homework after today, is to do the attendance exploration and look for how that could align to your current attendance work that you're already doing. So there's your homework for after our time together today. But I obviously want you to know what you have access to and how the system is going to support you to develop those plans for students who are currently chronically absent. Okay. We're still in it. You are still with me. I am so impressed that you are here. You have made it this far. And we're going to wrap up with the last steps of the process, which is a lot about data. So when we are thinking about where do we begin, where do we start? I know Bailey asked this question a little bit earlier on. Do we start with attendance supports? Do we start with performance? Do we start with skill? How you can decide this is based on the needs that your students have. So what are you seeing in your data? What types of needs are you seeing coming up most often for student? Is it skill needs? Is it performance-based needs? And also knowing your capacity rate. What is realistic for you to be able to do right now? I just went over a lot of different supports with a lot of different components. As you were doing some exploring, I'm sure you saw that there's quite a bit to implement a tier 2 support. And we really want you to start very small and very incrementally. So kind of decide amongst your team to pick one skill, performance, or maybe attendance, and start with just a couple students. Implement it, see how it goes, do some learning around that support, and just start there. The expectation is not do all of these supports, implement all of them right now, right away. Usually we say start with one and then eventually add another one and add another one to build your menu of kind of your offering of supports for students. So kind of look at your student needs to make that determination first, and then start with one performance support, or maybe you run one small group or 2 small groups to kind of just like get your feet wet, explore and practice for this time of the year, usually I would say if you can kind of just practice with maybe one support and then sort of outline for yourself for the fall, where would we like to begin in the fall? What might be the first thing or the first support we're going to implement since we're getting towards the end of that school year? So start small. Don't feel like you have to do all of it and implement all of it. Know you have access to whatever you need, but start with your student needs first and go from there. All right, let's finish our steps. So if you remember, we are still in step 4. I told you like we're going to be in this step 4 for a while. So we just talked about the implement part of step 4 is implementing those interventions or supports, all the core components. And now we need to know, is that support working for the student? Is it helping the student to make progress? Are we seeing behavioral change? So this is where we're going to monitor progress, and we're going to monitor first the fidelity. So are we actually implementing this support as it is designed and it is planned to be implemented? And 2, did the student actually respond to this intervention? If we didn't get the match right, performance versus skill, or we picked the wrong one, we're going to know right away from the student progress monitoring if we don't start to see change and we need to change the course for the student. So built into the system are the monitoring tools for you to be able to do this. So I'm going to go back into that student that I added and that small group that I added. So I'm going to find back to my students list. So once you add a student in or a group in or performance support in, how you can do this. So that is my Nicole Deep Dive student. Again, for this, so this is an example of a skill support, a regulation group. So I can see my students, I can access my curriculum, and then any support you add, you are going to have these 3 things. You are going to have progress monitoring. So I am going to be able to progress monitor that student. I can enter data in for that student. So this is our rating scale for the skill support. It is built in for you. You don't have to come up with anything for the skill supports for progress monitoring, but you are going to go in. You obviously can enter progress monitoring data based on, are we seeing an increase in these skills and a reduction in those things that got the student into the group? And you are going to then see graphs. So you're going to be able to do visual analysis. For all of your students that are in any support, you're going to be able to enter progress monitoring data and use this to help you make decisions. The other piece is measuring that fidelity. So depending on the support that you're in, your fidelity is going to look a little bit different. So implementing a skill support, your fidelity components are different than any of your performance supports or your attendance support. It'll be listed here for you. And you can go in and say, did we do this or did we not do this? So it's going to then calculate your fidelity, and our goal is 80% fidelity of implementation. You also can collect student attendance. So if they are unavailable, if they miss a group session, or if they're not at school and they're not getting access to the intervention, we're going to know. So you can make sure that we're also tracking that attendance for the student as well. And so that is your tools, your monitoring tools. So progress monitoring of student progress, as well as fidelity and attendance. Again, this is going to be built into any support that you add for a student or add and you have multiple students in the support. So these are your tools to use. This is then going to help you with our final step. I like to kind of present this together. It's going to help you with your last step, which is review and decide. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take that data that we collected, we're going to review our progress monitoring and our fidelity data, and then we're going to decide, where do we go next with the student support? Based on your fidelity, was it sufficient or insufficient? Did we reach 80% fidelity or not? And is the student actually responding well? So based on our progress monitoring data, looking at our graphs, do we see that the student is responding in the way that we expected? Or, no, we're actually not seeing that that student is responding. and you're going to make some decisions. So do we continue, maintain the support? Can we say like, the student's doing awesome, we're actually going to exit, we're going to fade from the support? Our fidelity is not looking hot, so we're going to improve our fidelity. Or we love a student that responds really positively and our fidelity was garbage. Then we can say like, get them out. They probably don't even need tier 2 support. Maybe the student is not responding well, but our fidelity looks really good. We might need to change the intervention. We may have matched incorrectly and we need to go back and say, is this the best support for the student? Or if we're not doing great with our fidelity and we're not seeing student response, we probably want to improve our fidelity first and see if that changes how the student is responding. So this step, again, you're going to see built in, it's the decision center. So this is the very last tab that you'll notice on your support. And you can go to this make a decision. And I can say, did we do this with fidelity? Yes or no? And is the student responding yes or no? And it's going to give you some recommended actions. So if I change my answers, my recommended actions are going to change that your team can then consider what do we do next? What decision do we need to make about the student based on how the student is progressing and if we are doing it with fidelity. So again, kind of these steps are going to be built in to the system and through that process. Okay, I'm going to pause there. We made it through all the steps. We made it through all the supports. So I want to give some time for questions about that, or if I can highlight a tool again that you want to see before we do a little bit of wrap up. So again, once your support is already in there, this is where you just access it all. So once it's in, you can access your curriculum, your support materials, your progress monitoring tools, your fidelity tools. You can make decisions. So really that steps 3, 4, 5 of our process, it's all going to be built in right here. Yeah, Rosalind, go ahead.
Just kind of curious, Nicole, if you can quickly show not how to do it, but maybe more the capacity of us marking a session and also doing a makeup session.
Yes, absolutely. So if you have a student, so let's say go through session 1 with the students, I'm good. We go through it. I go through the whole lesson. Up here at the top, I can mark that session as complete. So once I go to mark it as complete, this will pop up. You can identify if a student was absent. So let's say Rosalind was not able to attend our first session. And I sent that family communication and mentor communication to the people who need it. So the student's family, as well as the student's mentors. Once I submit that, I can view my fidelity and attendance. And what you're going to see here is that fidelity is going to pop up. So I'm already doing great, 100% fidelity with 1 session in. And then it's also going to show me that Rosalind was not able to attend this session, and it is going to prompt me to do a makeup session with the student. So I can start that makeup session for Rosalind, and then I can mark it as complete, and it will change her attendance. So I know that she got all the sessions delivered. So it'll let you know like, hey, don't forget, like Rosalind didn't do this session. You still need to do it for fidelity purposes. Obviously, we want students to get all of the support needed. So that's how you would go about doing that, marking the session as complete, entering your attendance and your fidelity, and then it'll pop up here on this. Thanks for that prompt, Rosalind. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So a couple of things that I just want to mention to wrap us up. Obviously, you just participated in one of our live PD supports. So you maybe you were sent a link from somebody at Character Strong to sign up for this. So I just want to orient you to how you can continue to access this support. So if I go back to our training and resource hub where we started in the beginning of our time together, We went through this tier 2 process tab. I'm going to click on this live and recorded trainings tab. So you will see this deep dive. It will be uploaded on our recorded trainings here. You can also access previously recorded trainings, our overview video, our topic trainings. What you will also see is access and your ability to sign up for our tier 2 office hours. So we went through a lot today. You're going to be exploring a lot. You're going to start potentially implementing. As you start to do so, we have open office hours where you can come and ask questions. You can, if you're having a kind of problem of practice, say like we're struggling with this thing, or we don't remember how to access something or how to deliver or facilitate that support or what implementation looks like, you can come to our office hours and ask absolutely any question that you have. Again, at any time, you can always email us at support@characterstrong.com as well. So if you cannot attend in office hours, know that we are still here to support you at any time. So if you have questions, you absolutely can always just email us and we are happy to answer your questions. But you have access to other trainings and other opportunities for support if you do need it after today. There's a lot in these deep dives. We throw a lot at you. We really appreciate the time that you are taking to learn about tier 2 and about implementation and using the tier 2 platform. So please access the support that you need as you need it, whether it is more learning, us through office hours, if you need to see, or if we can answer any questions for you, please send it to us. We also offer like in-person training if you need that as well. You have a contact person from Character Strong, you have a sales person or someone that your district is in contact with usually on a regular basis. So if you feel like you need more training, specific training, or training for your situation specifically or your team specifically, we are more than happy to help you with that as well. So I always want to mention that. And also a huge clap. Congratulations. We made it. So we made it to the very end through everything. Again, thank you so much for your time. I have a couple things to just wrap us up and then I'll set you free. So I asked you in the very beginning of our time together, how were you feeling about implementation? And I'm going to ask you again. Now, how are you feeling about implementing? So in the beginning, we saw like excited, maybe a little bit overwhelmed. Maybe there was kind of a lot to implement. So now I want to know, are you feeling the same? Are you feeling different? Are you just feeling like my brain is exploding with all the information that you provided me? So how are you feeling now about implementation? Good, bad, in between, excited, overwhelmed. How are you feeling about implementing tier 2? Also, thank you for all the thank yous in the chat. Appreciate everybody joining us today. Thank you, thank you. If you are just too overwhelmed to explain how you're feeling, I get that too. That is totally, totally fine. Hopefully you have some ideas of where you want to go. I'm just going to leave this as kind of like a reflection. If you choose to share, great. If you choose to unmute, great. I'm just going to kind of challenge you to think about one thing that you can do after today. Maybe it's a little bit more exploration. Maybe it is kind of trialing a support. Maybe it's getting your team together. Maybe it's doing some clarity work on whole school readiness. Maybe it is simply, I need to go back to this recording because I'm not going to remember everything that Nicole said. So just kind of reflection for yourself on one action item for today. And then the very last thing is we really appreciate your feedback. So if you are still with us or if you're watching this recording later and coming back to it, you can always provide us feedback for these trainings at any time. I will drop this in the chat as well if anybody needs access to it. And you can go ahead and provide us with feedback. You can scan the QR code if that works too. And please let us know how we can support you, what you need from us as you are implementing. We're really excited for you to get started with Tier 2 and implementation. And I really appreciate your time today, your attention today, and really excited for you to get going. So thank you so much for joining us. Let us know what you need, give us feedback, and we are here at any time to support you. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending, and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.